Growing Up Weird.
Hi, and welcome to Growing Up Weird, the podcast where we explore how the earliest chapters of Western childhoods shape the health stories that we then carry into our adulthoods. I'm Dr. Greg Dickens, scientist and consultant in medical innovation, and I am here with Dr. Gwen Bradbury.
Hello!
Who is a healthcare researcher, author, and your guide through the science stories and traditional strategies that connect childhood beginnings to lifelong good health. Each week, we dig into the newest evidence, understand how it links together, and walk through some of the changes that we in the West could make to give kids decades of better health. So, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a healthcare professional, or simply curious about how the body and brain develop over time, you're in the right place. Are you ready? Have you got a cup of tea? Good. We begin, as ever, with the news. Gwen, have you got any news?
I have got some news, Greg. You?
I've got one news because I've been told off 2 podcasts in a row for having 5 newses. So I have one news.
One news. Okay. Do you want to go first?
A new.
Go for your new.
Okay. Melatonin.
Okay.
Melatonin. Back in 2017 to 18, roughly 1.5% of parents in the US were using melatonin on their children to help them fall asleep. For those of you that don't know, melatonin is a hormone which is made in the pineal gland in your brain, goes into your blood and helps your body to regulate its circadian rhythm by onsetting sleep, so to speak. If you give it to people, it helps them fall asleep, is the theory. A recent study, which has been publicised a bit recently, showed that in kids who are neurodevelopmentally normal, there's no statistically significant difference.
Oh, really?
Adults, sure. Kids who are neurodivergent, sure. Kids who are neurodevelopmentally normal, no.
I've heard it was useful for jet lag. That's like the use case that I've heard it
Sure. For your high jet-setting 6-year-olds who are off and off on business trips, potentially very useful.
Okay.
But then would they ever be neurodevelopmentally normal? Who knows? Little tiny 6-year-old in a suit. Anyway, that is not what I'm reporting on today.
Okay.
In that same study, and I have read a couple around this now, back in 2017 to 18, as I said, 1.8%. Nowadays, in the last 30 days, the evidence suggests that 18.5% of US 5 to 9-year-olds are medicated with melatonin now.
Whoa, 1 in 5?
1 in 5.
Oh my goodness. 5 to 9-year-olds as well?
Yeah.
You think that's, I don't know, I guess naively I'd have thought that's kind of past the point where you think there are like big sleep problems.
So,
okay,
that's one of the 2 things I want to bring up.
Okay.
One is that there is increasing evidence that giving melatonin reduces melatonin production.
Oh no, of course it does.
Of course it does, right?
It's a regulated system.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there's some increasing evidence. That's not new. That's been the evidence for that's been coming up over the last year or 2.
And some of us like to pay instead of getting bodies to like do the sort of
dirty.
If
my body makes something naturally, I like to buy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very important. It's that also showed up in athletes on erythropoietin. You take them off it and their blood count crashes.
Oh,
so you have to take them off gently.
Oh.
And you take away their medals at the same time.
Oh.
Sure, they feel terrible.
Sorry, listeners. That was a bit of an aside about blood doping.
I'm sorry. Yes. Anyway, so as well as it might not be that useful,
and
as well as it might reduce the amount of melatonin you make, and potentially setting those levels in childhood affects how much melatonin you can make for your entire life.
Okay.
There's one other thing which I thought I should mention, which is by potentially, this isn't well proven yet, interacting with kisspeptin, which is a little inter-hormone thing.
Okay.
It might delay the onset of puberty.
Fascinating. So giving melatonin might make children enter puberty later.
Yep.
Interesting.
Now, we've spoken before about how entering puberty early sets you up for early closure of growth plates, lower adulthood health, lower adulthood metabolic health. We haven't talked about it, but there is evidence that being forced into puberty early decreases adulthood cognition and memory. But there's a whole host of things that happen if you delay puberty too.
Oh, okay. I was about to be like, wow, melatonin is the
cures all of
solution.
these. Yeah, so there are some interesting things around growth and bone health and things that happen if you delay puberty too.
Fascinating.
And this is well, I'm not even getting into the puberty blocker debate.
Okay.
But, yeah.
This is like kids who are gymnasts and delaying it. You're not talking about not delaying it physiologically. You're just
I'm talking about delaying it hormonally.
Hormonally. Okay, interesting.
I have not looked into the difference between delaying it by restricting calories, etc., or delaying it by messing around with melatonin. Anyway, if anybody's interested in reading up around this, which you absolutely should, the most recent kind of loud paper was by a whistleblower called Judith Owens, she's a very loud researcher at the Boston Children's Hospital, and has been quite rightly saying we need to be paying attention to this. But she echoes a big paper that put out a big meta review of, how many did they do again? They looked at 19 journal articles which had something between 18,000, I think, in number. Lots and lots of kids on this drug.
Wow.
And they said, there may actually be downsides to this, and it's massive. 1 in 5 kids in the US. It's not that in the UK yet, but we're getting there, and no other country is even close to us.
I find it fascinating how we even refer to melatonin, because it's got a cute and cuddly rep, right?
Yeah, it's
I
in
think
gummies.
that's the thing. It's in gummies, yeah. It's in gummies. And you've called it a drug, and it is absolutely a drug. But there's this kind of weird grey area that people seem to see around hormones. And they're like, they're naturally produced. It's like a contraceptive pill. It's like, it's just more of what you have.
Unless they're called estrogen or testosterone, and then people get really, really, really aware of them.
Yeah, fascinating. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, one other thing you should know is that I had a quick look at the gummies in the US, and obviously hundreds of manufacturers.
Yeah, and completely unregulated.
Completely unregulated,
imagine,
and they've been showing up with between 40% of the stated dose and 400% of the stated dose. And melatonin intoxication is now, or rather overdose, is now the major poison control alert for kids.
What?
It's the biggest.
Oh my goodness.
This has crept up on us. We have not, as a society, noticed this enormous uptake.
And I mean, that brings up the whole question of gummies as well, because there is an intrinsic problem about putting drugs into sweets. Let's just
candy
think
here, please,
for a moment.
bilingual.
Candy. Yeah. Imagine if we just take drugs and put them in candy. And sometimes it's okay because they're like multivitamins. And as a friend of mine told me, her child ate 70 multivitamins in one day.
Oh, God.
And not one day, probably a really short period.
Why am I laughing?
I know, why am I laughing? Because it is intrinsically very funny. Because actually, when she called the GP was like, rah.
Like, you put sugar coating the outside of paracetamol and that kid's dead.
Well, exactly, I know. And so this is where the grey area comes, because, supplement manufacturers love to put everything in gummies.
Yeah.
And when the thing itself is not really going to work or have very little effect, I mean, we have to be quite brutally honest here. The only things that are suitable is if we are sure there is an absolutely massive, what we would call therapeutic window.
Yep.
The difference between the dose that a person needs and the dose that will harm them. But as soon as you start putting drugs where that therapeutic window is closer, so melatonin, or really close, like paracetamol.
Hang on a second. Up until recently, people have thought melatonin was safe as houses.
Safe. Yeah.
And in adults, it is.
Yeah.
This is a developmental issue, which is only showing up now because basically this wasn't built for kids.
Yeah.
And now it's in 1 in 5 children.
Yeah.
So I'm with you.
I
think
appreciate
this is
the correction, but I would say that probably, if we think about like multivitamins, I would say you could eat a lot before you start to see toxicity, and acutely.
Vitamin A, but yes.
Yeah, but a single very acute dose you're unlikely to get.
Would be very unlikely to cause you that much damage.
I would say I don't know about melatonin. I've got no idea what happens when you overdose on it.
So maybe don't put it in gummies.
Yeah. Paracetamol. My goodness, there are certain things that we really shouldn't have. And actually that is the problem generally when we make medicines appealing to children, is we massively increase the overdose risk.
Yeah, true. Well, there you go. There's my news.
Fascinating.
What's yours?
Mine is about early childhood caries.
Okay.
Do you know much about early childhood caries, Greg?
Well, caries, they're the little yellow birds people keep in cages, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sing very sweetly. That's canaries.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's a carie?
So, caries is tooth decay. Okay. So, early childhood caries just means that a child has decay in their milk teeth.
But they're disposable teeth. Surely that's what they're for.
Yeah. They're called milk teeth, not decay teeth. It's very different. Okay, but early childhood caries, they are a big deal. They're really bad for children because if you get decay in your early teeth, you're much more likely to get it in your later teeth. You may
Is that just because it's in a mouth that causes decay?
Yeah, probably. But it is. Well, I don't know whether it's an indicator or whether it's an absolute.
Interesting.
What we do know, and I only found out very, very recently, is actually some of the factors that lead to decay in those early teeth actually affect how the enamel grows in the adult teeth as well. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. But if we just look at the early childhood caries piece,
yep.
The paper that I'm looking at is a big review, about 18,000 children, came out a month or so ago from Tănase et al. In Bucharest, Romania, published in the journal Children.
Oh, what great name.
Great name, yeah.
By Robert Moss.
What?
Oh, sorry.
Is that a
Pop
cultural
culture
reference? Oh, don't do that to me. But anyway, the question was looking at the impact of breastfeeding on early childhood caries, because there have been a lot of studies that suggest that breastfeeding before a child has milk teeth reduces the risk of developing caries in those teeth as a child gets older.
Okay.
But when you feed for longer, and especially if you feed at night after the early teeth have come through, you have a higher risk of early childhood caries.
Okay.
And this is, I found this kind of quite curious, just from a, sort of World Health Organization suggests breastfeeding to at least 2 with benefits after that. Mm-hmm. In traditional cultures, breastfeeding has traditionally been much more prolonged than it is in the West. And so, I was just kind of curious, I wonder why there is such a strong link here. And there are a few things that came up. One is that if you look at the rates of early dental disease in traditional cultures, they're often really high, but they've gone up loads. And it doesn't look like those cultures have suddenly changed their breastfeeding practices.
Sure.
But
what has changed?
Well, this is a big question, and I can't find a really good paper that unpicks this. But one of the things that we know to be true is that if children drink sugary, or have sugary drinks, or eat sugary foods or foods with added sugar, after weaning, their risk of early childhood caries goes up a lot, because they're selecting for bacteria like strep mutans that are major causative agents in decay.
The old red complex bacteria.
Red complex?
Yeah. I spent a long time reading about this.
I know,
bacteria.
this is why I was really excited about talking with you, because you know loads more about oral health than I do. So, yeah.
Red complex, including the keystone strep mutans, is a lactic acid producing group that, if you give them simple sugars and any sort of anoxic environment, including a nice thick biofilm, which we also call plaque or calculus or tartar.
Tartar, yeah.
Why there's a sauce named after that, I don't know.
Very disgusting.
They will produce lactic acid in quite appreciable quantities, and that will drop the pH of your teeth, and so out will migrate your calcium ions, and then your whole tooth crystal falls apart.
Yeah, thank you for that.
That's all right.
So we know that having added sugars after 6 months of age is associated.
Yep.
We know that breastfeeding overnight, especially if you don't clean the child's teeth before the child sleeps, is a strong predictor of early childhood caries. But I guess what kind of confused me is that we haven't evolved around that practice. But what I did find, which I do wonder whether is playing a role here, and it doesn't seem to be controlled for in any of these studies, is the amount of fructose that crosses breast milk.
Oh,
yeah. It's really significant. So,
seriously?
Yeah, if a mother has a high sugar meal, I can't remember exactly what the difference is. But if a mother has a high sugar meal or drinks sugar sweetened beverages, she puts a big fructose load through her breast milk. It takes about 4 or 5 hours where you have elevated fructose after consuming sugar. But I do wonder whether some of this, and the changes that we're seeing even in traditional communities, is because actually these babies are in effect getting a soft drink through the breast milk.
Spiked with Coke.
Yeah.
Not Coke. You know what I mean.
Yeah. But I mean, what's fascinating is that, the amount of fructose in breast milk tracks very closely with a child's fat mass in infancy, for example. So we know that the maternal, mother sugar intake goes through the breast milk. Perhaps what we're seeing is actually that that breast milk, when you haven't got teeth, you're not seeing dental signs because there are no teeth. But as that child, and that's why, I don't know, that maybe, I'm not sure why breastfeeding is protective in that early stage, but one can hypothesize a whole load of things around microbiome, immunoglobulin, etc. But when the teeth come in, that balance then starts to shift. That's
really interesting.
Yeah.
The other way of thinking about that that occurs to me is that it's not just having sugar in the mouth overnight that will put holes in your teeth by the morning. It is having sugar in your mouth overnight in a mouth that is used to having sugar in it.
Yes.
So your oral microbiome shifts depending on what foods you put in your mouth.
Yeah.
And, whether you use mouthwash or if you sleep with your mouth open or whatever, a whole bunch of things change your oral microbiome. And if your oral microbiome is tilted towards the species in the red complex, especially strep mutans, then if you put sugar in your mouth overnight, you will generate acid and it will melt your teeth. Melt, they're used wrongly. Dissolve your teeth. Whereas if you have a mouth microbiome that has never been fed sugar and you put milk in the mouth overnight, I wonder what happens.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because if you read the kind of current medical established accepted wisdom piece around strep mutans, it talks a lot about trying to prevent infectivity with strep mutans, which is something we've seen. I think that that kind of let's prevent transmission and it will all be fine.
They were talking about this back in 2010.
I know, does not work. And I do think a lot of that is there's sugar industry influence here. Let's just, the problem is not the sugar, the problem is that children are getting infected with this bacteria.
The problem is not the sugar, children aren't brushing their teeth. The problem is not the sugar, children aren't using mouthwash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you can have strep mutans in your mouth, but if you don't have sugar in there, strep mutans is never more than a tiny bit player.
And even if it's a massive player and you don't have sugar in there, it's not an issue.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
But anyway, I just thought that was super interesting. So I guess that what would be my comment on people who are on extended breastfeeding? Well, it does appear to, in our culture and in many other cultures, especially those that are influenced by our culture, increase the risk of early childhood caries, which you really don't want. So I guess the ways around it are to, once children have milk teeth come in, to clean their teeth after feeding before they sleep. And if you can't always do that, just make sure that you are eating very little sugar, and you have been eating very little sugar throughout that breastfeeding period to hopefully reduce the risk that your child has the bacteria that are going to increase the risk of decay.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say, and I'm aware we're taking ages on the news here, but would it be fair to say that any one of those interventions would probably be very effective, and altogether they're likely super effective?
Yes, absolutely.
So those interventions again.
Yeah.
Don't eat sugar when you're breastfeeding because it will go through breast milk.
It goes through breast milk.
And that will probably be an issue for kids without teeth because they put fat on, and that's an issue for later health, or just
for later health. Yeah,
it's nobody likes a fat baby. Everybody likes a fat baby. What are we talking about? And more of an issue when the kids have got teeth.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So don't eat sugar if you're breastfeeding. That makes sense. Or brush teeth.
Or brush teeth after once they've breastfed.
Is that it?
I think those are the main ones. Or, I mean, I guess reduce nocturnal breastfeeding once your child is old enough to be eating foods that are lasting through the night, right?
Sure.
You can breastfeed, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I've got distracted.
Yeah, you can, breastfeed, do teeth, sleep in the morning. I don't know, it won't work for everyone. There are different ways of soothing babies to sleep.
Certainly true. A nuanced and interesting one.
It's a nuanced one. I know, I ended up going down absolute rabbit holes here. I was like, this is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I did the same.
Baby teeth, wow.
Okay, we have spent 20 minutes on the news, and this is meant to be a half-hour episode.
Okay.
So we're going to bomb through this.
Yeah, let's bomb through it.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I'm just going to hit you with the major questions. We're talking about mattresses, yes?
Yes.
So there we go, that was a big question. I am going to skip out this whole first section that in your article you talk about the history of mattresses, which I think is fascinating. And I'm going to call that the wherefore mattresses. And we're skipping that because it's passé. A little bit of French there for my listeners. Let's go on to what. What are mattresses?
Mattresses are large pads on which people sleep. Can be filled with foam, horsehair, springs. Yeah, you look at me like horsehair. I know, I was like, horsehair? What? Where did that come from? Horse.
The only thing that should have horsehair is a horse or potentially a violin bow.
A violin bow. I was going to go there as well, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's what mattress is.
Yeah.
Okay, why then? Why mattresses? Why do we use mattresses?
We use mattresses for insulation, to keep us warm.
In modern houses?
No.
That sounds like wherefore mattresses.
That is wherefore mattresses, I know, but that's why...
That's why they exist,
That's
and
why
that's
they
why
exist.
they are what they are.
Yeah, that's why, exactly. But most people use mattresses because they're comfortable.
Okay. It wasn't their original function.
Not their original function at all. The original function was
gotcha.
with insulation. Yeah.
Lovely. But nowadays we use them because the human body loves a bit of comfort.
Yeah.
If you lie down to sleep on a hard thing,
Yeah.
there's a soft thing next to you. You wake
Yeah.
up on the soft thing somehow.
Yeah, magic.
Magic.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why mattresses. Now the big bit. Well, second big bit. First big bit. Why not mattresses?
Why not mattresses? 2 reasons.
Let's have it.
1, musculoskeletal health, how your bones and joints work.
Okay.
And 2, lung health, how your lungs work.
Fascinating. Tell me back to 1.
Yes, 1, musculoskeletal health. So, during sleep is a time for your body to rest and repair. Unless you're a neuroscientist, where you think the brain is the sleep is about the brain,
They're obsessed
but
with
that's
the
just a red herring. The sleep is a time for your whole body to do all of the rest and repair things that needs to do. In the brain, the kind of memory formation, all of this kind of thing. We say that is those are also repair and recovery processes. So the next day you can continue to do what you need to do, but with a little bit more knowledge.
Yep.
Anyway, so that means in order for your body to do the rest and recovery it needs, you need to unload the tissue. So you need to provide times where the tissues are not under compressive load to allow lots of blood flow, lots of movement, stretching, etc., to make sure those tissues repair as well as possible.
Okay. That's one. So what has that got to do with mattresses?
In order to unload those joints and to be able to do the movements that the body needs to recover, the body needs to sense when it's been in one position for too long. And we've talked about this before. How does the body, when the brain is asleep, keep track of how long you've been in any one position? How does it sense the passage of time when you're asleep?
Because you need a particular amount of time in any one position for that setup to have been refreshed and reloaded. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And you would do that if you're awake by watching the clock or thinking or using your internal clock. How does the body keep count when your brain's switched off?
So it has to sense something that drives a kind of local or reflexive movement.
Okay, sure.
So what it does is when you have pressure on certain areas of tissue, you at first you don't really respond to it, and then it starts to get uncomfortable. That discomfort is a stimulus. It forces you to change position.
This is sitting in hard wooden seats in lecture halls, isn't it?
Yeah.
First 15 minutes, 20 minutes is fine.
Yeah.
Then you've got 40 minutes left in the lecture and you're like, oh, there is no comfortable position here.
Exactly.
Right,
yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm still not linking this to mattresses. Surely you're still putting the same amount of weight down.
You are putting the same amount of weight down, but when you are putting the same amount of weight on a soft surface, you distribute that weight over a much greater area.
Right.
So no single area is subjected to the pressure that causes discomfort.
It doesn't set off the timer.
It doesn't set off the timer.
Fascinating.
Exactly. And that's one of the problems we see with soft surfaces in loads of different places. We talk about it in shoes, we talk about it in chairs, but mattresses are kind of the whole body equivalent of shoes and chairs. Right?
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't stand on one foot for 7.5 hours.
Exactly.
But I would lie on a
But
mattress
you would
for
lie on a
7.5
mattress
hours.
for 7.5 hours. Exactly. And so the problem with mattresses is they stop our body keeping count of how long you've been in any one position. So it stops you changing position and unloading the different parts of your body in the way that your body expects.
Nice. I've just remembered, read you call that stretch and sag. Is that
Stretch and sag.
That's the same thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's slightly different though, isn't it? Stretch and sag. So you've got the discomfort on the... Well, I guess so what you're saying is that the time period over which you are resting on certain prominences, bony prominences...
Is the time that you are stretching certain joints and tendons and ligaments, and you are allowing the muscles unsupported between the bony prominences to sag and stretch themselves.
Yeah.
You wrote it in Growing Up With, the book.
Yes.
It's just sparkled back to life in my brain.
Yeah,
I should read that more often.
Stretch and sag. It's one of these things that we talk so much about. Oh, we should do more stretching. We should, stretching's really good for us in all of these ways. You're like, okay, but when bodies really stretch? It's when you're asleep. And what do we do with them? We put them on something, we support everything, and so they don't stretch at all.
That's interesting.
And I think that's one of the really fascinating things, is when you look at the mattress literature, which I have done in quite a lot of depth, and there is a huge amount because there's a lot of money in mattresses.
Quite a lot of depth. About 8 inches.
But there is loads on how you make sure that mattresses all conform to the same standards. And then one of the recent reviews was like, it's great. All of these mattress manufacturers are trying to make sure that everything, they're holding the spine really straight, they're doing this, doing that. But there is no evidence to suggest that is good.
Outstanding.
But we're really, really good at thinking, it's ergonomics. Let's just hold the spine in a completely straight position because that's got to be the best thing for it, right?
Okay, listen up. Not you, Gwen, I know you've heard this before, but everybody else, especially anybody involved in health and safety or anything, the best position is the next position. You cannot get a perfect position. Any position will mess you up if you hold it for long enough. And that goes for sleep too. And I hadn't linked it to soft mattresses until this very second.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, I see absolutely how mattresses link to musculoskeletal health and flexibility and all that. And I can see now why you sleep on something that keeps you really comfortable all night, you don't move, and you wake up feeling as if you have grown a spine made of rock and you can't move and everything kind of is crunchy and horrible. But you also said lung health, did you not?
Yeah, lung health.
Talk to me about lung health and mattresses.
Lung health. Well, mattresses there's a bit of an uncomfortable thing about mattresses because either they're new or they're old, right?
Okay, yes.
And new mattresses have problems for lung health and old mattresses have problems with lung health.
Well, let's do this chronologically. What are the new mattress problems for lung health?
So, one of the things that, in order for mattresses to be super comfortable, springy, soft, etc., they contain a lot of air.
Sure.
That gives them the kind of bounce.
Okay.
Within different structures. But because they contain a lot of air, they also are very, very flammable.
Air being very flammable.
You're looking at me like I did really well. I went to a very nice school. I can tell you all about science.
No, I'm saying, come on. Do you don't have to know anything about science to know that air isn't flammable?
Okay, it's one word.
But I am just merely taking the mickey. You are completely right. The things with lots of air in are very flammable generally. That's why Tinder is like the way it is.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about the app. Yes, you were right. I was taking the piss. Carry on.
Absolutely. So, mattresses can quite easily go up in smoke. Is that better? I'm just avoiding the F word. So the problem is because they have the possibility of going up in smoke. This obviously poses a huge risk because when you're not awake and something's burning beneath you, that is a very bad thing.
Sure.
And so in order to be able to be sold as a mattress, mattresses have to be doused in flame retardants. Okay. And we know that a lot of these chemicals are really toxic. They're endocrine disruptors, they are respiratory irritants.
Yep.
So in order for you even to have something that is called a mattress, it needs to be coated in chemicals that we know are toxic. Major sources of air pollution, of indoor air pollution, especially in bedrooms, and known to have many problems for child health.
And that's fine as long as they're not anywhere near your face, right?
That's fine, providing they're not near your face. Yeah, and providing you don't spend too long close to them. Yeah, and the other problem is because they're so massive, you need loads of the chemicals. This is, it's a really, it's a really, really vicious problem here.
Okay. Yeah.
So new mattresses, terrible because they release a whole load of volatile chemicals into your child's nose and mouth for long periods.
But what we know about off-gassing is that it's a geometric decay.
Exactly.
Exponential decay, which means that it's loads and loads and loads in the first day.
Yeah.
And then about the same amount in the next month and about the same amount in the next year and then eventually not very much.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. But we do know that that mattresses seem to be a major source of indoor air pollutants.
Understood.
Fine. But you're right.
Use an old one. That's
so use
safe.
an old one. Yeah. 10 years down the line, probably very little coming off it. But what's the problem with mattresses? They're really big and how do you wash them?
Okay.
So what do they fill up with?
I don't know. Mank?
Yeah, loads and loads and loads of mank. And that includes, it may be allergens, maybe house dust mite, maybe parasites, maybe skin cells. Oh, no. But you end up with, you then have a thing that is full of other kinds of respiratory irritants.
Okay, sure.
which is also close to your face, which you also spend a lot of time next to.
Fine.
So this is the problem with mattresses. They're either new or they're old.
Is this why gorillas make their new bed every single day?
Yeah.
They make a new mattress every single day?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
That's why you have to like always keep mucking out horses as well, so you don't end up with all sorts of problems.
Sorry, but I think you'll find gorillas are more relatable.
Okay, fine. Yeah, horses. They're the only things that I've had to like regularly change their beds on when I had to work at the stables on my work experience.
I'm glad you dropped that in. I was about to tell everybody you kept 6 horses as a child back on the estate.
In my dreams.
Okay. So either they're new, and they're filled with benzene derivatives, flame retardants, a whole bunch of endocrine disruptors, which, for anybody who doesn't know the word endocrine, messes with your hormones, changes your development and how your body works in the long term.
Yeah.
Or they're filled with a whole bunch of mank, trademark, which can be allergens or other things that inflame the lung.
Yeah.
And inflamed lungs lead to worsened adulthood health because...
Well, because you have higher inflammation, you have higher risk of asthma, damaged lungs just are harder to breathe through.
Yeah, fine. I completely agree.
More sensitive to the effects of air pollution, of other pollutants.
And the inflammation in the nose makes it more likely you'll breathe through your mouth, and we know how bad that is.
Yeah.
Grand. Okay. Mattresses. Terrible. Final question then.
Yeah.
I haven't got a word for this. What else mattresses?
What else? Yeah.
What else
what
can you
if
do?
no mattresses?
Yes.
Yeah, great question. So, I think there are various different things that we can do, because you could, if all you wanted to do was prevent some of the release of unpleasant respiratory allergens, you could try wrapping your mattress in a bag. So, potentially
Don't
things
unpack
like
it when it gets to your house.
Don't
Leave it in
unpack
the plastic.
Yeah, great idea.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so there are ways that you can provide a barrier to respiratory allergens particularly. But if you're also trying to have children sleeping on a firm surface, this is quite a challenge. And I'm not going to pretend that it's not, because our Western bedrooms are built around bed frames and mattresses.
Yeah.
So in order to do things differently, I think you have to look elsewhere. You have to look at different cultures. So look at the Japanese who wear futon mattresses, very thin mattresses, so you have much less of all of the problems that I talked about before because they are so much thinner. On raised sleeping platforms on the floor, much more common. There are other options. There are kind of wool pads that some people use. There are flat surfaces with padding that is not sold as a mattress, so it doesn't need the same degree of flame retardants.
Interesting.
To give, so you're trying to find like things that you can use to pad that are not sold as mattresses, because then they don't have to go through the same.
That's interesting.
Yes, through the same chemical processes.
I used to sleep on a sun lounger mattress.
Oh, interesting.
When I was a kid.
Yeah.
That is just because it could roll up and fit in the back of the car. So if I was ever sleeping around a mate's house or various other places, I could unroll my sun lounger mattress and it would end up being about 5 centimetres thick. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I'm a bit big for a sun lounger mattress nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, yoga mats also good.
Interesting.
It's much. And the final point I will make, it's much easier with children to get them sleeping on very firm surfaces to start with.
Is that because they are not yet fussy sleepers?
Because they're not picky sleepers, they sleep really deeply. But as an adult, you can also train yourself to become fit enough to sleep with very little padding. And so, for example, when we have people coming round, we have a 2-bedroom house, so I sleep on the floor in the children's room, and I definitely could not have done that 5 years ago, and now it's pretty comfortable.
Yeah. Gwen's making it sound like I sleep in with the guests. I don't. I also sleep elsewhere. It's just I haven't yet trained myself to be fit enough to sleep without a mattress, so I sleep elsewhere in the house on a mattress.
In fairness, you slept on my floor without a mattress for a year when we lived at university.
Sure. I'm more of a gentle flower nowadays. I'm less Spartan. But yeah, if you get the position right and you are flexible enough and you can get there, sleeping on the floor is no issue. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, you do move around and you do wake up thinking, I moved around a bit last night. Mm-hmm. And then you stand up and you're like, oh, every single joint does not hurt.
Yeah.
Do you remember the look, where was it? Maybe in Ghana. I certainly got the look when I asked the question in Nigeria of, does anybody around here ever wake up with a crick in their neck? And they're like, okay, is that some sort of bug? No, we've never had that weird disease you're talking about.
Yeah.
All because people slept on incredibly hard things and moved around a bit in their sleep and woke up feeling fresh as a daisy.
I remember having a lot when I was younger, but I haven't had it for years.
Yeah. Did Gwen sleeps on like a slab of rock? It's incredible. It's not true. It's a thin pad on a wooden board.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
You have my respect. Okay, that was good. Thank you. We've been through where mattresses came from, what they are nowadays, why that's an issue, what you can do about it, and the fact that it is difficult to find a replacement. But if you are inventive and open-minded and your kids are still young enough to be flexible about where they sleep, they can get a whole lifetime of better sleep out of this. Mm-hmm. Wicked. Listener question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a really good question, which was, I'm wondering what co-sleeping actually looks like. Are the co-sleepers that attach to a main bed actually co-sleeping? Or does it, in order to regulate mother and baby sleep effectively, does it need to be closer than that? Which I thought was a really interesting question, because co-sleepers are the sort of kind of bed attachments where you can have your baby in with you, but then you just put the baby on the same level as bed extension, but a little bit further out of the way. And this is it's a really interesting question. When we look at how people co-sleep in more traditional cultures, it very much depends on what their sleeping situation looks like. Mm-hmm. So if you are co-sleeping in a hammock, it looks very different from if you're co-sleeping on a bed, on the floor, on a sleeping platform, all of these things. But what typically happens is that the mother kind of curls in a C shape around the baby. The baby has access to either breast, and the baby, if you look at videographic footage of mothers and babies co-sleeping, babies often feed without the mother ever rousing. So there is something about having quite close proximity where the baby is able to do their own breastfeeding, which seems to help with frequency of feeds, probably helps with maternal sleep as the mother isn't waking up. And so I guess the question really this reader is asking is that if I am feeding and then putting my baby into a co-sleeper, what is it that I'm actually doing? And it's very clear that co-sleepers are trying to trade off between two things. They're trying to get the benefits of breastfeeding, of co-sleeping and breastfeeding, something that is sometimes called breast sleeping. But they're trying to get the benefits of breast sleeping without having any increased risk of SIDS. We've talked about what the risk factors are for SIDS before, so I'm not going to go into that. But the trade-off that you make of having to move your baby away is that your baby does not have so much of your scent, so much of your closeness and your warmth, and does not have the ability to regulate their own feeding to the same extent. So I guess what I would say is that there may well be benefits, they may well work for you, but it's not quite the same as how mothers and babies have historically co-slept.
That was cool. Thank you very much. A well encapsulated question. No requirement for addendums or anything. Addenda? Whatever. Folks, thank you for listening to us. I've been Dr. Greg Dickens, and still am, and...
I'm Dr. Gwen Bradbury.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.